Welcome back to Close to Broke. My name is Kieran, and today we find ourselves at the Resorts World. No 5-10 game going. It is a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, which is just kind of a random day to play. We're going to be heading into a 2-5 game. It's the biggest game they got. Hopefully we can get the vibes up, because there's not much going on here, and I refuse to play the Bellagio or the Aria. Nothing wrong with the poker rooms, just a little too expensive for me. Let's enjoy today's session, and again, thank you for all the love on episode 100. I appreciate you guys. Let's hop into this. You may be asking yourself, Kieran, how the heck are you back in Vegas when you were at the bike? Don't you live in LA? What's going on? And have some explaining to do. Well, let's get into some poker hands, hang out until the end of the video, and I can go more into detail about why I keep ending up in Las Vegas. Anyways, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not to play at the 5-10 in the Bellagio or the Aria. I'm gonna pass on that. Today, I had the intention on playing something late. I got into Vegas kind of late today. I don't know, it's like around 11 o'clock, 11:30, and I'm stumbling into a poker room at a pretty late time. This is a late time to get a session in, but luckily for me, I was able to go to Resorts World and put my name on the 2-5 list. As you guys hear from that, that's not actually what I'm going to do. We're actually hopping into a 10-20 game, no straddle at all in this game. So let's hop into the very first hand, playing 10-20 at the Resorts World, my favorite casino. We looked down at Queen 7 of spades after a button opens to $60. I'm going to go ahead and defend here for 40 more bucks. And we're going off to a flop that comes 6-5-4. 2 clubs and a spade. We flop ourselves an open ender as well as a backdoor flush draw and 2 overs. With the action checked over to the opposition, he bets 80 bucks. I decide to take the aggressive route and raise. This is a board texture that's unbelievably more favorable for me than him. And if that's the case, it's nice to be able to do this when we have some not so nutted draws. If we have like 9-7 or 9-8, maybe like a gut shot, it's nice to have those kind of, options as well. Anyways, we raise 200 bucks. He makes a call. And we're going off to a turn card that comes to 3 of hearts. That is a wonderful card, as now we improve ourselves to a straight. What's even better than that is our opponent is a recreational who's shown the propensity to make some pretty loose calls. Anyways, at this juncture, I'm going to go ahead and check to him and kind of lead him into this kind of trappy McTrapster vibe. Not usually what I do, but I don't know. Let's see if we can try this out. We have this pretty much locked up here. I check it over to him. He snap checks it back. The river card comes a 9 of hearts. Doesn't change very much whatsoever. 8-7 is still the nuts. No flushes get there. I decide to lead out for a bet here of $480. The reason I go for this larger sizing, I don't know if it's correct theoretically, but it's nice to be able to also do this when we brick out a flush draw. If we have a hand specifically like Jack 10 of clubs, Queen 10 of clubs, it's nice to be able to bluff this river at some frequency. Either way, he ends up making the fold, and we're going off to the next hand. At this point, things are moving along fairly swimmingly. The table is shortly but surely becoming a little more short-handed. I joined and I was the 8th player at the table. By this point, we're like 6-handed and things seem to be winding down. I haven't even been playing for like 20 minutes and it seems like people are ready to pack up and leave. But let's take, advantage of that. Maybe people are playing a little more passive. Either way, in this next instance, the same exact situation happens as what happened in the last hand. The button raises to $60. We'll refer to him as the dock. And I look down to A6 offsuit from the big blind. I go ahead and make the call, and we're going off to a flop that is once again favorable for us as it comes 3-4-7 rainbow. With the action squarely on me, I can definitely lead out because we didn't do it earlier, and it's, again, a good board for me to lead out on. But I actually end up just making the check. My opponent ends up betting $80 once again. And once again, we do the easiest thing, which is just making the call. We're going to go ahead and play this a little more passively and take over the reins of the hand on a later juncture. The turn card comes a 9 of diamonds. Great for us, and again, not so great for him. Sure, he can have a hand like 9-7, 8-9, 9-10, Jack 9. Those things do exist, but I think if I bet here on the turn and then bet like a pot size bet on the river, I can get him to fold better hands. And moreover, it's nice to bet when we, have a bit of a draw here, as well as equity to now. This is like a multi-purpose bet. You can call this the Swiss Army knife of bets. I took over the reins of the hands by betting $160. Luckily for us, our opponent folds, and just like that, we are scooping in yet another hand, batting 1,000, 2 for 2 to get this going. By this point, I've been given a ton of different nicknames. Whatever the case may be, there's one thing that is for certain. I'm going to play this game aggressive. I think, 1, it's way more entertaining. 2, it's way more fun as a player. And 3, people just overfold, especially the tighter players at the table. Anyways, this next hand is a really interesting one because I make it interesting, I guess. Anyways, we look down at King 3 suited here. I think we're 5 or 6 handed at this point. The game is, like I said, dwindling down. I couldn't raise to $60. It folds over to the button, who decides to make it $240. From what I can see, he seems like he plays this game regularly enough to probably speak better English than me, but also, make some money at the game. Who knows? He seems to be knitting it up. Anyways, with the action back over onto me, I end up playing the aggressive card out of nowhere. This is like a Yu-Gi-Oh card that has been pulled out of the deck of old. I got like the Exodia card. I don't know if you guys watch that stuff, but Power Rangers. I got my Transformer now. Maybe that makes a little more sense. Anyways, I end up 4-betting with King 3 suited to $720. My opponent goes into the tank before eventually deciding on a call. So, not great, but not awful. He didn't jam, I guess, so at least he gave me the opportunity to hang myself. We're going off to a flop that comes 9 deuce deuce rainbow. It does flop a backdoor flush draw for us, and that's good enough for me to bet. I end up betting a third of the size of the pot here. $500 seems like the most optimal thing to do. My opponent decides to make the call. I'm allowing myself just around a 1-to-1 or 1 to 1.25 SPR to make this bet on the turn for a jam if I can improve. And improve we do. The turn card comes as 6 of spades. Bang. That's good enough for me. We turn ourselves backdoor equity. And if you guys remember from a couple, sessions ago in the bankroll challenge, we were doing something similar with Queen 5 of diamonds against, our good friend Ethan. We ended up using that aggressive line to try to get a big fold from him, which he ended up not doing, not in our favor. But either way, it's good to just be aggressive sometimes. I decide to take over the hand by the throat and really take the reins of the hand. I end up jamming all in for $2,800. This is a massive bet with just king high. I do have a flush draw, which is bailing me out, but in all honesty, I'm just praying for a fold. We're never good if we're called, and, that's not fun. Luckily for us, we don't have to sweat it as our opponent instantly click the like button for some good folds energy. 1, 2, 3, like. He folds. Great for us. We're going to take it down. Outstanding. Super happy with the result there. Don't try this at home. This is a stupid play that got rewarded because I think these players are just playing a little too passive and too nitty. Either way, we're going to take it down. A massive pot coming in our favor. We do show the 3 to be a good sport, to show that we're here to gamble it up and to make some plays. Sure, it may be gambling, but I don't know. I went with my read. These guys have been playing super nitty, and it seemed to work out in my favor this time. Maybe it's becoming a regular thing, but don't even want to ruin this hand. Let's hop into some craziness. Bear with me because the video does catch up here on the flop, but there's some pre-flop action to go over. Early position, Doc limps here for $20. Gets me on the cutoff, or the button, and I decide to raise to $100 as an isolation after I look down at King Jack of Hearts. My opponent from the small blind, who seems to be like a pro, maybe not, maybe he is, I don't know, but he seems like a pro. He decides to 3-bet to $260. Folds back over to me for less than 3x in position. I mean, this is like you're serving me up a platter here. Maybe I'm getting dunked on by pocket aces, but I don't know. To me, it feels like this is an easy call. We're going to go ahead and call in position with a suited Broadway, and the flop is absolutely majestic. Queen 10-4 with 2 hearts and a spade. Not only do we flop ourselves an over, we flop ourselves a flush draw and a straight draw. We have 2 ways to make the nuts here. As the queen is the queen of hearts, we do flop that second nut flush draw as well as a beautiful open-ended straight draw. Ton of equity here when my opponent decides to c-bet for $240. I'm never going to be folding, and I think raising might be the better play. We're both playing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5 or 5,500 to start the hand. And to me, it's probably best with this much equity, no matter what he's holding, to get most of the money in the middle. I decide to raise to $700 to allow myself an out. If we don't hit our equity, maybe we can blast off by 3-barreling. But more than likely, at least build a pot, so if we get there, it's more likely that we can make some kind of crazy play up. My opponent ends up making the call, and we're going off to a turn card that is unbelievable. The turn comes an ace of hearts. So now there is no question in our hearts. As we know, we have the nuts. That's it. We just have it. We got it. He checks it over to me. And at this point, I end up doing something ridiculous. This is when GTO is kind of thrown out of the window maybe, or maybe it's right, who knows. But I just go on the side of aggression. At this exact moment, I feel like my opponent has a very strong holding. If you're going to see bet the flop, call a raise on a very dynamic board. At the very least, I think my opponent has somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 pair, or, top 2 pair is very likely. He can easily have ace queen here. My opponent can easily have pocket aces and pocket queens. I don't want to see an action-killing card come on the river, whether that's a straight card, whether that's a heart. And if that's the case, I'm going to do something ridiculous. I end up deciding to jam $4,420 into the middle. If you're doing the math, that is over 2x the pot size. That seems ridiculous in many regards, and I'm not here to tell you guys whether that's a great play or a bad play. I just know that at this juncture in my head, I think my opponent has a hand that he's incapable of folding. And if that's the case, whether that is, tagged as exploitative or theoretical, I don't care. My goal is to get as much money, whether I think that I have the best hand or, in times where I am bluffing here, I want to give the most pressure to allow my opponent to make a big fold. Either way, after a brief tank, my opponent decides on a call. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. My opponent looks at me, and I immediately let him know if he does not have a set or 2 pair, he's drawing dead. He lets me know that that is not the case, that he does not have a set, and I'd say, we're going to go ahead and run it once, dealer. The river card comes a beautiful brick as it comes a 3 of hearts, so I guess if he had 5 deuce of hearts, he would have had the nuts, actually. But either way, an unbelievably massive pot. Another over 5-digit pot in our favor. And what is that? I can't even do math. What is that, like a 500 big blind pot? Or 600 big blinds? I'm going to take that every day of the week. Let's go. If you'd be so kind, bear with me as this is another instance where the video is a little late to start recording, as the hand seemed pretty innocuous until we got to a certain point. Either way, I've got some catching up to do, so let's follow along. The hijack opens to $60, which is that pro we mentioned earlier. The button decides to 3-bet to $220, Mr. Doc. It's over to me on the big blind, and we look down at ace-10 of clubs. I'm going to go ahead and make the call. The hijack makes a call as well. We're going 3 ways off to a flop that comes ace-jack-4, rainbow. Great flop for me, but there's nothing to do besides check. Luckily for us, the action checks through. Feeling pretty confident in my hand. Not a lot to worry about. And the turn card comes the 8 of clubs. Now we've got the full rainbow out there. I check it over once again, and again, the action checks through. As we're catching up with the video now, we're off to a river card that comes at 3 of clubs. Again, no flushes hit. This is a pretty boring board. I decide to value bet my pair of aces for $260. Going fairly small here, going in the neighborhood of a third pot, 40% pot. My goal is to get called and buy an inferior hand. There's going to be like ace-5 suiteds out there. There's going to be holdings that are like king-jack, queen-jack. And I don't think by going big here it does me any service or give me a chance of being called. The unthinkable happens, though. The hijack decides to raise to $660. The action folds back over to me, and he's a pro, but he's a pro that's been playing pretty tight. And if that's the case, tight is right. Maybe he's waited, maybe he's pounced, maybe he's bluffed me. But that's the thing about being tight. When you have it, I'm just not going to give you the action. So I end up making a pretty disciplined fold. Maybe old Kieran would have been blasting off here, but one pair is not going to be enough against the gentleman that's played one hand in the last 1 hour. So unfortunate for him, or me, I don't know. We never got to see the hand, but we end up making a fold. Maybe it's a good fold, maybe it's a bad fold, but I'm going to go ahead and sleep pretty comfortably, making a decent fold for once. As things continue to progress along, there's something that I need to paint, like a picture I need to paint so you guys understand what the heck's going on here. Like I said, we're like 6-handed at this point. There's maybe 2 recreationals at the table, and then the rest of the guys maybe think that they're pros or just play kind of tight. Again, this is not a great, situation, but anytime there's like 1 recreational at these stakes, it's a pretty good game anyways. Either way, the other people that are in the hands or that are playing as well are unbelievably tight pre-flop. I mean, maybe like 10% VPIP, and I'm definitely splashing it up, I guess, in theory, or what they think, but in reality, I've just been running really hot. I've had a bunch of like ace queen, ace king, pocket aces, raising, 3-betting, and getting it down on the flop. So I look kind of like a maniac, I guess, to them. Either way, that's enough of the painting and the storytelling. It's time to get into the next hand. In this next instance, Under the Gun decides to raise to $60. Again, that's the dock. I'm in the cutoff, and we look down at ace queen offsuit. I'm going to go and 3-bet here to keep the aggression, to keep the image going. $200 to go. Out of nowhere, the big blind, the gentleman that's played, again, maybe 2 hands in the last hour, decides to 4-bet to $800. At this point, I know that I'm instantly folding. I was never going to make this call. This is just not something I want to be playing against. Even if I'm in position, I don't know, this feels like ace, queen, ace, jack suited maybe at worst, but most likely, you know, a pocket pair like jacks plus. So I'm going to go ahead and fold, but I don't even have the option to because the player from the under the gun position, Doc, decides to 5-bet jam for 2K. Makes my life even easier. I end up making the pretty quick fold. He ends up making the call, and would you look at that? The 4-better, the big blind, has ace queen as well, and the under the gun player has pocket kings. So bang, look at that. No surprises there. 2 monsters end up colliding. They run it twice, and pocket kings hold. So dodged a bullet there, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. At this point, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're 4 or 5-handed. So again, the table's starting to wind down, and a lot has happened. This session in itself is only about an hour and a half or 2 hours long, and the game ends up breaking at the very end. So that's why a lot is going on, and especially when you're short-handed, things and chips just begin to fly. You've got to be opening a little wider and be able to make a couple more plays to fight for the pots. Either way, like I said, we're playing 5-handed. We look down at king 7 of hearts. I'm under the gun. I decide to raise to $60. The button player decides to raise to $180, which is, again, this is the 3rd hand that this gentleman has played since we've sat down. Again, maybe with this suited hand, I can really crack him and penalize him, but I'm going to go and defend here considering I have a ton of chips in front of me. And not only that, he has, I don't know, in the neighborhood of $5,000, $6,000, so there's enough money and enough implied odds to make the call. And we're going off to a flop that comes ace, 8, 6 with 2 hearts and a diamond. This is a wonderful flop for us as we flop ourselves a backdoor, as well as a flush draw. Not only the flush draw, but the nut flush draw. Our opponent is checked 2 as I make the check, and he decides to c-bet for $140. Never going to be folding, and raising seems, not great. I don't like playing out of position flush draw super aggressively, I guess. So I end up making the call, and we're going off to a turn card that comes a jack of clubs. I check it over to him once again. Not a great card. I don't pick up any more equity. I don't make any more pairs. I don't get an open-ended straight draw. I only sit here with king high and a flush draw and a dream. I check it over to him with the intention to call reasonable sized bets, and that's not what he does. He ends up deciding to bet $420. That is a little too much for me. I end up making a pretty disciplined fold here, folding the nut flush draw. I'm okay with that. I think that the issue becomes on the turn, and you have to be honest with yourself. If a heart does peel off, what are the chances that I get called for a big bet? And I think the chances is like 0%. So I end up just making the fold here, considering that even if I do hit my draw, what is the likelihood that I get another round of bets in? And again, I ended up landing on the likelihood of 0. So I make a pretty disciplined fold, and we're going off to the last hand of the session. We look down at jack 8 offsuit here from under the gun, decide to raise it up to 60 buckaroonies. The big blind decides to make the call, and we're going off to a flop that comes 4, 5, 7 with 2 clubs and a heart. With the action on to me after being checked to, I decide to c-bet for $80, a little bit larger. Don't like my c-bet very much. I think this is a board that's not too great for my range and better for my big blind, the big blind's range, excuse me. And the turn card comes the 9 of hearts. Not great for me. It doesn't add any more equity and probably improves my opponent, to 2 pairs sometimes, or even a pair. He checks it over to me. I end up checking it back, and we're going off to a river card that comes the ace of clubs. This is a great card for me. The flush draw gets there. The ace gets there. It's a scare card. I've got a bet. I have a pretty crappy hand. When the opposition checks over to me, I end up betting a little bit on the larger side for $240. My opponent snap calls me, and he shows down 10-5 of diamonds. So unfortunate for us there, we got owned and slam dunked on. This was one of the recreationals, so maybe that's why. Just wasn't a good idea. So we have no video for that hand. Excuse me for that. Again, you're just going to have to believe that it happened. But that is enough for me. I've had enough. I've played enough. I'm over it. The session kind of was interesting. We made 2 really awesome plays, but I don't feel like I played outstanding. My play was like okay. I took advantage of some situational stuff where I'm happy and really, really proud that I was able to see something and act on it, and it worked out in 2 hands. But for the most part, with how nitty this table has been and how I just don't have it in me to play 10% of hands, and that's what everybody else is doing. So I end up racking up my chips. I'm going to book my win, and the table's breaking as these guys are all going to dinner together. That's never a good sign. So I'm going to let these 4 gentlemen have dinner together and do whatever it is that they do. And I'm going to go to my home, relax, record this lovely video for you guys, and again, do the most important thing, and that is to thank you guys for your support. I appreciate you guys very much. Let's throw it over to me in person, and let's see what the heck is going on in my mind.
As you guys can see, that session was quite the interesting one. To be quite honest, wow, I just run good at this freaking place. I love the Resorts World. I've got to hop in an Uber. I'm going to meet my family. It's kind of late. It's like 1 a.m. That's a little late for my poker situation. So I'm going to head over to my family real quick. They're eating dinner. I have not eaten today. I've eaten one thing for breakfast. I'm starving. Let's go pig out. I think we've earned it. I don't want to spoil what we made. Let's get over to dinner, I guess, and talk about how that went. Well, that's going to do it for today's session, folks. I really appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out with your favorite vlogger. Different place than usual, and it's an absolute mess. A little bit to mention, I guess. I bought a home here in Las Vegas, somewhere to have a home base during the World Series of Poker, and more importantly, an investment property, hopefully. Let's talk about today's session. It was ridiculous. You guys are going to be even more like laughing at how fast it was. We played for an hour and 17 minutes. And we made $5,200 in that session. Can't complain at all. The game broke pretty quickly after I joined. Not gonna complain about it. Happy to get a session in nonetheless. I appreciate you guys as always for watching. Thank you so much for the support up to this point of the videos. Have been unbelievable. There's no other way to put it. It's been outstanding. Anyways, with this new home base here in Las Vegas, it'll be really nice and easy during the World Series of Poker to have somewhere where I can easily come home, relax, unwind, as opposed to before I was just, bouncing between different family members' homes out here. So it's nice to have my own home base, and it's going to make for better quality of content, I think, and it's going to make for a really, hopefully, a bunch of better runs. Either way, I appreciate you guys as always. Have a lovely day. Stay happy, stay healthy, and more importantly, run good at the tables, y'all. Deuces.